Okay, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. When was the last time you stood beneath a dark and starry sky with thousands of stars and the Milky Way shimmering in a great arc above you? Maybe you have to think about this a while, because nowadays, due to the light pollution, such a dark spot is hard to find. But imagine now, looking up, maybe in a warm summer night, lying with the back in the grass, your eyes to the sky, what kind of questions come to your mind? Could one of it be one of the most fundamental and timeless ones, which is, where are we? Where's our place in the universe? Let me take you in the next minutes on a journey through space and time, following the constant change in humanity's view of its place in the universe, and taking this as a metaphor for how we ourselves can shift our own perspective. If you imagine the ancient past and the people looking at the sky, they must have been overwhelmed with its appearance. No light pollution, much less distractions. And a long time in this history, we've put ourselves in the center of the cosmos. This aligned well with everyday experience, sun going up and down and the moon, and also with worldviews which emphasize human importance. This so-called geocentric model was the predominant description in many ancient cultures. Particularly this one by Ptolemy, developed in the 2nd century AD, it became a kind of a standard. In order to explain the rather complicated movements which we see from Earth of the planets, he had to introduce so-called epicycles, which you can see here as the small circles the planets move along while they are orbiting the Earth. This is a rather sophisticated and complex concept, which is, as we know now, not necessary anymore. But it's an interesting point, because he had a fixed view. The Earth is in the center, so he had to adapt a model to that. Although there were already ideas about a heliocentric model in some ancient cultures, like ancient Greece and later also in different cultures, this model was only seriously challenged during the Copernican revolution, when Nicolaus Copernicus proposed a heliocentric model with the sun in the center. But this came at high cost. It was hard to take because we were moved out of the center, and the Earth became crucially one of the planets. So there were still attempts trying to find some explanation in order to maintain the geocentric model with these findings. But finally, when Galileo observed Jupiter's moons and the phases of Venus, and Kepler did the mathematics, this heliocentric model was confirmed. And we were not in the center anymore. But then the question was, or it was no question, the sun is the center of the universe, isn't it? Well, in the 18th and 19th century, it became clear that the sun is only one star among thousands, millions, and billions in the Milky Way galaxy. Okay, if that's the case, if we are only orbiting one star of many, but there's only this one Milky Way galaxy, isn't there? Well, in the 20s of last century, Edwin Hubble observed this famous nebula called the Andromeda Nebula, and he could show, by resolving this nebula to individual stars, which are really far away, he could determine the distance. Very, very far away, over 2 million light years. And he could show that this is a galaxy on its own, and it's not the only one, many, many others. So our Milky Way became only one galaxy of thousands, millions, and eventually billions. So again, we were decentralized. But then, okay, the question is, aren't we then at least within the Milky Way in some privileged position? Well, in the 40s and 50s, radio astronomical observations showed that we are only sitting in a minor spiral arm, some 26,000 light years away from the center. Again, decentralized. Okay, if that's the case, but at least the Milky Way itself, is it somehow in a privileged position? Well, modern cosmology has taken decentralization further. Earth has no special location, the universe has no center, and at large scales, it looks homogeneous and isotropic, the same in every direction. This so-called cosmological principle reinforces that our location here is not privileged. And this is nicely seen here by this famous image taken by the Hubble Space Telescope called the Deep Field. Each speck you see here, almost each speck, is a galaxy on its own, consisting each itself of billions of stars. Well, but speaking about the universe, there's only one universe, isn't there? Well, there are theories which involve the existence of multiple universes. And most recently, our anthropocentric view had been challenged again. You may have heard in the media about the discovery of possible signatures of life on a planet orbiting a red dwarf star some 120 light years away from us by the detection of certain molecules, although final evidence has to be given. This is again a hint that life as we know it may not be unique, and again contributing to our decentralization. So much has already been explained in science, but so much remains unexplained, and this is exactly what drives our endeavors with our curiosity. And there's a really nice saying, a nice quote by a British statistician, George Box. He said, "All models are wrong, some are useful." I think this applies well to the constant change in the view of our universe, the models we set up, and there's never the ultimate truth in one of them. And the other day, I took a picture of this star, this red dwarf star. The planet is not visible with a small telescope, but if you were looking for where the star is, it's right there in the circle. It was a bit tricky then to identify, but I'm quite sure about this. Okay, so another opportunity and event which is perfect to connect with the immediate cosmological surrounding is a solar eclipse, particular a total one. If you have witnessed one, you will agree. When the last rays of the sun, like here in this image of the last eclipse I've witnessed in 2017, when the last rays are shimmering through some valleys on the moon, you get this fantastic diamond ring effect, how it is called, and the surrounding illumination, it gets surreal. You feel as if you are in a different world. And then suddenly, within the blink of an eye, you see this black hole or this black eye hovering in the sky with an eerie, shimmering light of the corona around it. And the stars are visible, maybe some planets, and you see a 360-degree sunset around you, probably. So everything you have taken for granted disappears. The warmth, the light, and it's a full-body experience because nature holds its breath, birds stop singing, temperature drops, and no wonder that people in ancient times thought that a dragon or a demon devours the sun, or in other cultures, it was an omen for the doom of a nation or a kingdom. But we should be humble when smiling about these explanations. Surely we have more robust ones nowadays for this and also for other things. But projecting ourselves 1,000 years further and looking back, we might smile at some of the explanations we have today. And speaking about eclipses, next year, well, I must confess I'm a kind of an eclipse junkie, although I've seen only 2. I have friends and colleagues with a much higher count. But next year, there's one in Spain. If anyone is from Spain, you're lucky. In August, I will be also there, of course. And Spain is lucky because it's also unfair. It has 3 eclipses in a row from next year on. So 2 total and 1 annular. And you should hurry up to see them because the moon slowly increases its distance from the Earth, roughly at the rate fingernails grow. Okay, that's not very fast, but in a few hundreds of millions of years, there won't be any total eclipses anymore. So hurry up, do it. Okay, astronomy. So astronomy teaches us not to centralize ourselves too much, but always keeping the possibility open that there are different perspectives. The astronomer and planetary scientist Carl Sagan had in the 80s the great idea to use the cameras of the Voyager 1 spacecraft after it had passed Saturn in 1980 to turn back to take a look on the inner solar system. And the result is here. It's the famous image here in a recently processed version, the pale blue dot. And it reveals our planet as a tiny, fragile speck traveling through the vastness of space. Sagan wanted us to reflect on our position in the universe. And it also reminds us that our planet is so precious, traveling in this through space, and having this in mind, there should be no other possibility than preserving it, than being no other possibility than being respectful to each other, to all life forms, and to the planet itself, which you can see here in a picture the Apollo 17 astronauts took on their way to the moon. That's the famous blue marble. So I believe that these thoughts can have an influence on your daily life, on your conversations you have with friends, with people in general, with colleagues, family. And after all, we tend to move in some bubbles nowadays, more maybe even than earlier times. And it's important also to listen to other opinions, to switch perspectives. And that's also an important ingredient for a healthy democracy. Sometimes we produce our own epicycles when explaining some situation or when we're having an argument. But this importance to switch the view and to change the explanation to a way maybe we don't want to have it, or to a complete new way, can emerge some new explanation, and in science words, a more robust one. Okay, so I'm supposed here to call for an action. Here it is. Disconnect from your devices, connect with the skies by looking up, and be ready for a change of perspective. And you can do this by your naked eye, with a binocular, or by visiting the local observatory, like this one we have here in the city of Aachen. Thank you very much for spending the last third of a microcentury with me. Thank you.